should significantly reduce sanctions on North Korea. This is a policy round. You should evaluate it through net benefits and evaluate post-fiat impacts first. Definitions, we believe are contextual. We know what a sanction is. Let's go to the plan. The plan is the resolution. South Korea should significantly reduce sanctions on North Korea. This would happen in the normal ways and means and as soon as possible. Let's go to the first advantage, which is relief for North Korean citizens. Uniqueness 1, sanctions on North Korea specifically harm ordinary people in the country. Washington Post, quote, sanctions aimed at punishing the North Korean regime are hampering the ability of aid groups to operate in the country. 2, this is uniquely harmful because North Koreans aren't allowed to leave the country. They can't legally exit and thus are forced to be subject to these sanctions. 3, these harms are significant. Washington Post again, quote, difficulties in obtaining supplies, including medicinal equipment, and in transferring money to fund aid programs have a direct impact on health and nutrition, aid programs that have a direct impact on health and nutrition levels throughout North Korea. This has led to significant harms. North Korea is 70% food insecure, and also there's growth stunting in 1 in 4 of their children. 4, nothing else solves. North Korea doesn't have the means to help their own citizens because the government itself struggles to make money, and a lot of the money that they do make is going to their nuclear program or like other weapons development programs. B, not many countries give aid to North Korea besides like China and Russia, but that's really important because China and Russia are not caring about the citizens of North Korea. They're caring about how powerful North Korea is, and they're caring about having North Korea as an ally because that's historically been what's going on. The link. 1, removing sanctions allows for aid money, food, and medicinal supplies to be sent in. 2, it sets a global precedent. If South Korea is being forgiving, South Korea being like the main enemy of North Korea, then the United States and other countries will probably too. Yeah.
So how does this solve for specifically the rest of the UN sanctions on North Korea, including like the US and these major companies?
Okay, so the US can still stop like aid and medicinal supplies, but obviously having even one country sending in aid and sending in medicine is very important. So yeah, I don't really know. We're not expecting to solve all aid problems in the country.
Also, South Korea is like on the border, so they're a pretty good person too.
Yeah, also South Korea's on the border, so they're like a uniquely good ally because of how geographically close they are. So yeah, on the second link again, sets a global precedent. If South Korea is being forgiving, then the United States and others will too. The internal link 1, citizens can have access to nutritional food or any food at all, as well as medicine. Again, sanctions have, quote, hampered assistance and relief activities. According to the UN, so removing them allows for free flow of aid. B, North Korea wants this and will let aid through. The only reason that North Korea currently doesn't spend money on these problems is because they just want to funnel it towards developing weapons, according to the same Washington Post source. So basically, it's not that North Korea doesn't like South Korean aid to help their people. Obviously, like any country would want their people to be like healthy and well, but it's that North Korea does not have the money to do so because they're funding other programs right now. Secondly, more non-government organizations and other organizations that are trying to give aid but currently can't will probably, because the bureaucracy doesn't prevent it, which amplifies this even further. Like it sets off a chain effect where there are more and more NGOs, more and more just organizations in general that are willing to give aid. And the impacts, this is pretty obvious. The main impact is health. Bad health, especially like food insecurity, can lead to starvation. It can lead to death and suffering through a number of ways. And even still, the severe impact on the quality of life, even if it doesn't lead to death, like growth stunting, that can have like significant impacts on somebody's long-term health and can lead to huge decreases in quality of life. So let's move on to the second advantage of Korean relations uniqueness. 1, South Korea wants to decrease sanctions. According to Reuters in 2019, they sent 300 tons of petroleum to North Korea. Secondly, decreasing sanctions would increase relations between North and South Korea because both countries want it, and also because it's for the purpose of helping these people. Third, North Korea and South Korea just generally want reunification. Look to all the meetings that they've had in Nolan. What is this?
Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un.
Oh yeah, look at all the meetings between Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un. According to Reuters, South Korea is pursuing cooperative projects with North Korea to rebuild their relations. Or there is a, quote, reunification ministry by South Korea. So it's obvious that this is like a big issue for these countries, and it's obvious that they want to help each other. The link is basically like allowing them to help each other. 1, decreasing sanctions literally means that these countries are interacting more, which increases diplomatic relations. And secondly, it sends a perception, which is super important, that South Korea actually cares about North Korea's people, and thus means more continued diplomacy. Subpoint B is that this is specifically important, again, for the same reasons I identified earlier, which is that nobody really cares about the people of North Korea, including their own government. Like, their own government wants to spend money on weapons instead of helping their people. So if South Korea says, we want to help your people for you, we want to actually do this because we care about these people, that obviously will send a very good perception to North Korea. So the internally, one, North Korea becomes less hostile and more diplomatic. These sanctions are specifically about helping these ordinary citizens. Again, it's not like sanctions, like we're just going to be funneling like weapons to North Korea or anything. It's not like we're going to be helping their military efforts. We're going to be specifically focusing on like citizen health, which is why North Korea would become less hostile, because obviously like they would like that. Secondly, it gives hegemony to South Korea and thus the United States, which is very important because China and Russia are the main allies to North Korea right now, and even though they aren't providing aid to South Korea or North Korea's people, they are still like the main economic ties that North Korea has. So hegemony is very important, specifically in this circumstance, because South Korea and the United States having more diplomacy with North Korea means that Russia and China won't. And the third part of that is that South Korea and the United States having power instead of Russia and China having power is very good, because it probably means that North Korea is going to be even less hostile and even less militaristic, because again, like South Korea wants to help these people, and China and Russia are saying continue to build your weapons, continue to like threaten these other countries, etc. So it probably means like significantly decreased hostility. Yeah.
Wait, so how exactly are the sanctions affecting food aid right now?
So in a number of ways. First of all, it like dismisses the idea that you can even send aid. Secondly, it like a lot of sanctions. Okay, the problem is bureaucracy, right? And a lot of these companies that are, or not companies, but non-governmental organizations and other aid programs that are trying to send food in, they're often even stopped at the border. They're asked for like identification. They're asked to show like who they are. And even if they have like identification, even if they can actually prove this, they're often not allowed into the country simply because sanctions are like, no, you can't do this. So sanctions affect it in a number of ways. So the impact relations are good. No one can explain that more.
Okay. Okay, it's gonna be one long off. Give it to me. Okay. Cool. Everyone ready?
1 second.
Are you also touching case?
Yeah, at the end. Hold on.
Any specific order there, just the advantages in order?
Yeah, in order. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. That's not stand. That's better. Okay, yeah, you can go. I'm sorry. This is okay.
Yeah, I'll start my time. Now, A is a framework. The role of the bot is to vote for the team that best interrogates the implications of economic systems. Vote for the team that best interrogates the implications of economic systems. So, justification for this is that one, we can see that epistemology is a prior question because it informs action. So, we can see that you can determine the implications of a policy by starting with questions of epistemology. One, we're seeing that trying to pass policies with flawed epistemological understandings fail. Or more for this is that base shapes superstructure. We're seeing that like having a particular epistemological understanding shapes the way in which we act in relation to those understandings. The word is actually like slavery was viewed as something good because of the profitability to the South and warped views on property rights. So it created pro-slavery policies like the Fugitive Slave Act. B, we're seeing that we need to break away from fiat in this instance, actually question capitalism. When we can see that fiat is illusory because like the plan isn't actually passed. There's actually no impacts in the round today besides those in round. And two, we're seeing that it's like more important to actually look at the ideological justifications and in round discourse. And like, because like, this is the way that we can actually personally change our actions and personally change our approaches to the world, which is going to be the most important impact in the round today. And then D, we get the speech acts are binding because like one, like discourse is by definition binding, especially when it has implications of other people and systems. And E, we can see the debate is a good testing ground for ideology because it's a unique space in which clash is incentivized, which forces people to justify their worldview and why is uniquely it's good. And F, we can see that the anti-capitalist solutions need to be paired with anti-capitalist discourse. When you can see that like contradictions shield the system because it allows like the system to perpetuate the myth of like progress while still rooted in the same bad ideas. And then so now it's oh yeah, found it. Okay, so the thesis is that the capitalism determines decision making. One, we can see that epistemological blind spots. It means that like okay, yeah. So like it affects like how well you change the world and how like the system perpetuates capitalism right now. More for this like textbooks by the Texas Board of Education Act. They buy $48 million worth of books like every year. We'll give you the text for it. We can see that like a million years to promote capitalism, white supremacy, and historical like revisionism, which is uniquely bad because like now students in this system actually think that status quo is good when it really needs a lot of change. And two, we can see that capitalism overall structure makes policy cyclical in nature because the affirmation attempts to solve a problem that's perpetuated by cap and created by cap in the first place. A warrant for this is that we can look to like in India where air pollution is really big issue. The government tells like the people to stay inside, but like not actually addressing the root causes like the overconsumption. So the alternative. No, wait, sorry, links. Okay. Onto the links. One thing that hegemony is means of spreading global capitalism. According to Ferguson 2004, South Korea using its democratizing mission in North Korea, like through soft power to increase the power of capitalism in that area is like
They
bad.
specifically articulate that North Korea is bad because they're not
They specifically articulate that North Korea is bad because they're not capitalist, and that's like a really big issue. And two, control for I'll take it at the bottom of this. Okay, two, the control for economic dominance. Wait, sure, actually, wait.
So when do we specifically articulate that North Korea is bad because it's not capitalist?
Like you basically just talk about how like the North Korean government is like not taking care of its people and it's not like being profitable.
Okay, yeah, and then needs 8 because that's not that. Okay, and 2, we're seeing that control for economic dominance fuels neoliberal practices from the Adaman and Madura 12. And economic policies implemented by the South Korea are to control people in North Korea through economic dependence, creating artificial reliance upon them, which is uniquely bad.
What other thing?
Oh yeah, and also another link is that South Korea is violating the
sanctions by the UN.
The South Korea is violating the sanctions from the UN by reducing like sanctions on North Korea on their own. And 2, we're seeing the UN panel of scientists has concluded that capitalism is incapable of combating climate change. And 3, we're seeing that the plan directly goes against
and weakens the
power of the organization that is actually trying to fight against cap. Okay, Impacts first. Yeah, sorry. On to the impacts. One we're seeing is that in value life, capitalism commodifies populations. Even if you value your own life, the market doesn't value your disposal. War for this is that where the Nigerian government and shell contractors work together to wipe out the entire Odiyama village and build an oil pipeline. True is that of ecocide. One, capitalism prioritizes the price of goods over their use. So at a world where green tech will never be profitable, the market won't create a war for this. Like shale oil and horizontal drilling will mean that barrels are always between $40 to $60 for the next 50 years. And we haven't even tapped into the Arctic Circle yet or shale oil reserves. And we're seeing that this is an extinction. Yeah, like extinction when we don't stop our emissions. And 3, we're seeing that like there's going to be endless expansion and continuous growth overseas will lead to more extinction. And then 4, we're seeing that of militarism. We're seeing the drive for resource and infinite growth is going to lead to resource wars. Our war for this is like oil in the Middle East and how that led to a lot of regional conflicts. And then we're seeing that when people aren't capitalist enough, like the military industrial complex overthrows them, which means that transition wars will always be inevitable under cap. Our war for this is solved or land. And then 5, we're seeing that capitalism is the root cause of poverty. We're seeing that a boom and bust cycles every 10 to 20 years will always ensure that there's always going to be unemployed people. I'll take it at the bottom. When we're looking to capitalism necessitates that if like the capitalism necessitates that if you don't have like skills at the value markets, you don't get access to food and housing. And 6, we're seeing that the root cause is also the root cause of resource shortages because according to the World Health Organization, there's enough food to feed 10 billion people in the world, but because like they want to keep prices high, they keep on like burning this food just to keep it like profitable. So we think that capitalism necessitates market scarcity just for profit, and look to the Great Depression where farmers literally killed their crops because they had too much food for it to be profitable. Now onto alt. Okay, question.
Okay, so you heavily implied earlier that North Korea is not a capitalist country. If that's true, and if capitalism is the root cause of poverty, then why are 70% of these people food insecure, and why are so many impoverished?
We don't say that, like, okay, so the argument here is that, like, South Korea is deliberately trying to intervene into the region because they don't think it's capitalist enough and they need to save it with their capitalism.
Okay, now onto the alt. We're seeing that the alt is to reject the AF as an instance of pro-capitalist rhetoric and vote with the negation to align with the popular front that contests capitalism in academia. Reject the affirmation as an instance of pro-capitalism rhetoric and vote with the neg to align with the popular front that contests cap in academia. She write as fast as she can. Onto solvency. When we're seeing that interrogating discursive constructions of capitalism in academia is uniquely key for good policymaking. Our warmth is row 5, like academia is actually the biggest control of the policymaking, which influences the economy, which in turn like influences everything. And the 2, we're seeing like epistemology solves our warmth is like when Thomas Sankara actually made anti-cap reforms in Burkina Faso because he understood that capitalism controlling knowledge is bad, that like led to a lot of good changes. And 3, we're seeing that resistance is key according to Quran 13. If you don't know how like the politics, if you don't like know politics of resistance without, you can't know the politics of resistance without understanding like what resistance even looks like, what it means. And like K-education is uniquely key for that because we can actually picture what a world without cap is and like look at how like that may be good and how we can actually implement and forms that into our current government. Where we're looking at the ballot is key because it shapes the norms and rhetoric and acceptable positions in debate, and we're seeing that winners win. So voting the K up at TOC in a recorded round is uniquely key to actually incentivize people in future rounds to use Ks and like learn and increase aligning with the popular front. And 5, we're seeing that debates space spillover because we're seeing that like debate actually solidifies your political views, and so it shapes how in the future we vote as educated voters and how we participate in politics personally. So even if you don't buy the fact that it could go on to other rounds, the fact that us four today in this round will become more educated voters and learn more about our political system and how we can personally engage with that to like pair that with like anti-cap actions is going to be like the most important impact in the round. Okay, now going on to the AF case. One, they say that post-fiat impacts. First, you can cross-apply our framework arguments, and two, at the point where they don't uniquely give any reasons to prioritize post-fiat impacts first, you can't vote on that, and that's not a reason. And evidence is bad because it hurts. It doesn't prioritize issues of minorities. That's unique.
It's not good for the greatest amount of
it's great
people.
amount of good for the greatest amount of people framework is bad for minorities. And now onto the first argument. They talk about how like wait, there's relief cuts. I'll take it at the bottom if I have time. And then they're talking about how like right now these aid groups, they can't actually give aid, and how somehow like setting a global precedent is really key to like increasing our relations with North Korea. But when we're going to see that this uniquely falls because like Trump has actually been trying to work with North Korea in the past, and if the United States, a bigger country than South Korea, hasn't even set off that positive change of like everyone wanting to go help North Korea, we're not going to see any world in which their plan would help trigger that. And two, we're going to see that again, UN sanctions, with the South Korea not following UN sanctions, is going to lead to increased backlash. We're actually going to turn this point. I think that less people are going to give aid to North Korea in a world where they don't even follow the UN sanctions, and all other UN countries will. On the second advantage, relations plus supply responses. Okay.
What's your ordinance? Okay, that's fine. Order.
Order will be case, and then the K in order.
With cases, that would be like post-fiat impacts first string on the top.
Sorry?
Is that with like the top of case sheet with like the net benefit stringing?
No.
So just straight to the advantages?
Yeah.
Can you do neg first and then case? 'Cause I'm still doing case.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll do then I'll do framing and then K and then case.
Framing? Okay.
Yeah, and on framing you say value post fiat impacting the top case.
Yes. They cross apply.
Also, for the alt, I can't read a word here. Can I ask you what it says?
Sure.
So it says,
I'll
reject the
just
app. What? It says, reject the app as an instance of
Pro-capitalist
rhetoric and vote neg to align
with the
the
Popular Front that contests capitalism in academia.
Okay. Extend Ben's first thing that he said, where he said that you should be evaluating post-fiat impacts in this round. That's going to be important because that's the way you should be evaluating things. Okay, first on to the roll of the ballot, counter roll the ballot. Whoever, again, as just reading that, whoever best reaches their post-fiat impacts in the round should be the one who is winning the debate.
I
Okay.
have a text.
Sure, already.
It's pretty simple. Okay, so first, counter framework, or not counter framework, framework responses. So one, imaginative liberation. It is important for us to be able to think about policy debate in this round, and policy debate is important, and evaluating post-fiat impact is important because it is through our ability to imagine things, which is what fiat is, that we are able to make decisions and become educated policymakers, which is what we are going to be in the future. We are in a unique position in our position of privilege to be able to go into the future and make actual change. Next is when you do this type of critical interpretation of whatever the resolution is, it means that we do not actually get the education that is necessary in order for us to become that type of policymaker in the future. And what that means is that the people who are currently in power, those people who are actually making the people who actually make decisions as to what happens in our world, those people, the elites, will continue to control our society and will continue to actually make these things happen. What we are doing is alleviating suffering. What we are proposing, we are imagining what a world would be like in which we take this action and whether or not that would alleviate suffering. That is something that we, especially because this is a recorded round, other policymakers can view this round and learn from that and can actually use it in their decision-making framework. Furthermore, anyone else, you should be voting us up on this alone. Reject the framework, because when you are evaluating this before what is actually important here, these post-fiat impacts, that means that you legitimize what they are, this type of discourse, which means that you will, there's a multiplying effect where then you cannot actually evaluate what is important in the round, which is actual policy making, because now you are having other people who are not, like people who aren't doing this type of ridiculous stuff, means that they are no longer, means that like policymakers are going to continue to be oppressive. It is us who are able to best evaluate this. So you should be voting in order to actually be alleviating the most suffering. Next is Ivory Tower. Don't buy their entire framework. Don't buy their critique, because it is from the perspective of someone who is not actually in this. They're doing this simply to win. This is not something that they actually want us to do. I do not, like, this is not, I'm not convinced. No one is going to be convinced of this happening. What else? Oh yeah, next is censorship. What CapKs are always doing is that it is causing censorship. They are saying vote neg, because we mention capitalism, because we endorse them, that engages in the capitalist system. And remember, the capitalist system is our reality. So what they are saying is that, if you vote neg, you are effectively censoring any sort of change that we're saying should be made in the real world in order to alleviate suffering. And what that does, and remember the crossflight, the multiplying effect going on all the other rounds. When you have censorship, then you actually, that is like that's contradictory. That is like a capitalist tactic, to be able to censor another person for what they're saying. And the reason it is censorship is because any sort of discussion about the real world will involve capitalism, will endorse capitalism, because that is realism. So that's the next counter framework, which is realism. You need to evaluate this bit through realism. It is unrealistic to think that we should not be capitalist, because we live in a capitalist society. Whether that is good or bad, that is the way in which we can actually make change. Anything that they talk about being change makers, it is baloney. They're just doing this to win. I actually want these things to happen that we are talking about. So it is very problematic that they are preventing these things from happening. They are causing censorship, and it really pisses me off. Okay, so on to the framework. So the safety valve is illusory. We are literally imagining things. It doesn't matter. Of course, something is not going to actually happen. The way that anybody imagines what a decision will be is that is deciding whether or not in the future this would be good. It's also an educational opportunity, and we are deprived of our education. Oh yeah, that's another framework thing. We are deprived of our education when we are no longer able to actually talk about the issues at hand, when we talk about the epistemology that they are bringing up instead, because the issues that, if they say that the best, back onto their framework, they say that the best place to discuss this is in debate. If they really want to talk about this sophistry, they should do it on their own time and not waste this important recording time in this important educational debate where we're actually talking about issues. They're not solving anything. Is there anything on framework that you want me to do? No. Okay. On to the thesis. They're really unclear about this. It's either going to give us a text, they never did. So that's very frustrating. That's probably going to be another unique reason that you're going to be voting them down, because they're clearly just trying to obscure what it is that they are trying to run, at the point at which I don't know what their argument is, and they didn't give me the text necessary in order to interact with this. They say that like capitalism is bad, basically. So first of all, this is just capitalism is good because it is uniquely able to cause innovation. It is the way in which we have solved all of our problems in our society is through our capitalist model, and any alternative is inferior. Okay, on the lengths. So they say so the lengths are really tenuous here. They really don't do enough work here about how we are linking to this. So they say that we say that North Korea is a capitalist system, and that means that we are saying that because North Korea is not capitalist, that means that we're saying that North Korea is bad, that means that we are saying that being not capitalist is bad. That's roughly what they're saying. So many issues here. We never say that North Korea is not capitalist. North Korea is capitalist. They have currency. They trade with people. You have them trading with Russia, with South Korea. You have all this stuff happening. They are a capitalist society. No matter what they say, because they involve capital, they are capitalist inherently. Yeah.
Next, they say hegemony equals capitalism. Why do non-capitalist countries have hegemony then?
Okay, they say hegemony equals capitalism, then how does hegemony is just having influence? That's an attribute. That does not equal capitalism. That is not true. That link does not exist, and if it does, they do not do enough work on it, so you should not be evaluating it, and don't evaluate anything later anything else later on because it'd be sandbagging, then we wouldn't have the ability to respond to it. So right here, you're delinking the entirety of the critical argument because we are not engaging with this whatsoever. I was not expecting this to happen because we are definitely not, their links and ours are so tenuous here.
Next, they say economic policy creates a reliance. I'm pretty sure we'd rather have people like who want aid to get aid rather than letting them starve and die.
I'm pretty sure that we want people who want aid have aid rather than letting them starve and die.
Yeah, like these people want help.
Yeah, these people want help. Okay, so then they, so we never say that they're not capitalist. We never say that they're not capitalist. So their links here. Are there any other links that they even have?
I don't think so.
No. Okay, so this is like delinked here completely. It doesn't. It really doesn't apply. Okay, so on the UN, they say that that the UN and that capitalism is incapable of stopping climate change. They're talking about the climate change argument. That's not true. That is not what they said. That is like a misquote. That is not what they said. They said that capitalism is a cause of this, but it does not say that it's impossible under a capitalist system to have this the environment be solved. In fact, they say that through multiple like capitalist things such as a carbon tax, that is actually how we solve these issues. So that's on the impacts here. Turn their environmental impacts. It is only through a capitalist system that we can solve any sort of environmental issues that exist through innovation, green tech. Look at Tesla. Look at these other companies that through capitalism are persuaded to actually help the environment. And also, yeah, cap is also the only way to solve the food issue, and cap is the only way to solve the militarism issue. Yeah, and then on the alt, yeah, what?
Yeah, there's no reason to vote for the alt because there's no incentivization. Cap case have already been run like a
There's
billion
no reason to
times.
vote for the alt because cap case has run a billion times. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing will happen. You're only avoiding anything from actually happening here. Perm the alt. There's no reason we can't do both. We can. Okay, on case.
Okay, on advantage one, they say one Trump couldn't do it. Trump isn't reducing sanctions.
On advantage one, they said that Trump couldn't do. Trump isn't reducing sanctions.
UN backlash one. UN charters are violated by
UN
everyone.
charters are violated by everyone.
Two, UN has no
Two,
enforcement.
UN has no enforcement. They can't do anything. Extend the second point. They don't respond to it. This is very important that we tell you about all of our specific internal listeners that go conceded when their case fails because they don't do enough work on case. The app is going to
I'm honestly just gonna go in the same order, so we'll be going framework, links, impacts, all.
Do any of the top case framing sheet in there?
I mean, we're just gonna address that in our framework, so you don't need it.
Wait, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
It's pretty much the same order you guys did, except you can take off the top sheet because we're just addressing framework on the K framework.
Yep.
Okay, starting time now. So really, they don't give you enough reasons as to why you should be preferring post-fiat versus pre-fiat overall. They give you no orientation, and then they tell you that like, oh, fiat is good because imaginative liberation because we're going to be policymakers. Number one, this is simply not false. What you say is that a lot of people do not have access to policy making in the first place, especially me as my partner, as female, as women of color, as minorities, and as non-Christian. We say that we really do not have as much access to policy making and legislation as they say they do. There's no equal access. So the point where like policy is like not accessible to people, what we say is that debating about epistemology and debating about these things is actually more empowering to us overall because we weren't given access to these spaces. Oh, and then they tell you that like it's important for people privileged by cap to make change to cap. Or saying that like capitalism is a bad system overall, but like they're literally identifying the fact that like they've been benefited by capitalism because people have been hurt by capitalism, and that they're going to try and make things better. But the point where they can see that in order for someone to be rich, it has to be like someone to be poor and someone to be hurt by capitalism. This is really a bad system overall, and that there's no reason why I should prefer it. And they say that we're hurting education because because we're taking away education from policy making. Number one, this is probably a good thing at the point where like most people don't have access to policy making, and number two, either way, like we're helping you become a more informed voter. And we literally can see the fact that like epistemology is key to good policies. Without good epistemology, it leads to zero policy failure. Look to literally our slavery as a word because it's economic, because like it saved money for people. That's why they viewed slavery as a good thing. That's why we need to question epistemology first. Epistemology is a true debate form because it really tells us what's good or bad beyond economic concerns. I'll take your question.
Is slavery common throughout the United States today? So has zero policy failure really happened when you don't have slavery on a large scale in the United States right now?
What we're seeing is that there's actually modern day slavery existing right now. We literally looked at human trafficking victims overall. What we're seeing is that in any world where we prioritize economic systems, that leads to a lot of like slippery slopes, and like where modern day slavery and human trafficking could be a good thing because it's a very profitable economy for many like black markets overall. And then they tell you that people make decisions can't like they're basically trying to alleviate suffering. But we're saying is that you need to consider why you have to alleviate suffering in the first place. Why is there suffering in North Korea? What we see is that a lot of the problems, like first the initial sanctions upon North Korea, then the removing of the sanctions, all these are caused by a capitalist system of mind. What we're seeing is that you need to question first why suffering exists and to actually address the root cause. Because them trying to like throw humanitarian aid and food aid, we don't actually address why North Korea is in this state in the first place. It probably shows that they're not solving for a root cause and only trying to put a bandage on the bullet hole to not really solve it. And they say that you should reject the framework because like we're giving you unlegitimate discourse. They're giving you no reason why philosophical discourse about epistemology is going to be bad discourse overall. What we're saying is that it's actually key because it comes first, because you're able to pass bad policies if you don't have good epistemology in the first place. So at the point where we're giving you the prior question to passing good policies, you need to be addressing pre-fiat first and pre-fiat impacts first. To ivory tower and how like, oh, this is like this is not convincing, that we're simply doing this to win. However, at the point where like our families literally came from like economic country, or excuse me, like communist countries overall, we're seeing that like we have a real stake in what's happening right now on like what capitalism versus communism, what the system actually does to people overall. And they say that capitalism is somehow censorship because we're such a discussion about the real world. However, this is not any less real world than fiat is. We're actually doing more real world because we're questioning what these economic systems do to us, how they affect us personally, and why they're causing these problems in the first place. If we keep on trying to like solve the problems that we're causing, this leads to just an endless cycle of us creating more problems and not really considering about the root cause scenarios. Yeah, so onto ivory tower. This is no ivory tower. Like literally, there's nothing confusing about like our case. Like literally, poor people, they know like that capitalism sucks because they get paid minimum wage for hours of work when they work just as hard as rich people overall. So we're seeing that like when they tell you ivory tower and that we're doing just to win, this really makes no sense. We see that like people have access to critiques. We literally look to like underground teams. They're like using critiques as like as a way for them to break past representations and to like. Sure, I'll take your question.
Have you seen any homeless people running critical arguments against each other recently?
What we're saying is that like this.
They don't have access to the debate space.
They don't have to have access to the debate space. So what we see is that debate space spillover. It leads to question, it leads to policy change, and like basically, good epistemology is going to be leading to better policy making first, which is why this is a prior question. And they tell you that capitalism is good because it causes innovation, but this is completely false. It actually kills innovation. What we're seeing is that like companies will always do whatever is the most profitable. That's why like the renewable sector hasn't completely taken over. We're still reliant on fossil fuels and coal simply because like they're always going to be using the most profitable method, and that's why these things exist in the first place. So innovation is only going to happen when it becomes cheap and when it's actually helpful. But also like renewable energy, like companies only invest in it when it's like subsidized by the government. So like they really need to have economic motivations in order to actually like do things that are innovative and help the environment. Yeah, I'm saying, I already said it. Like, talking about epistemology is like a true form of debate because we're questioning like whether our representations are even good or bad in the first place, versus just trying to like solve a problem that's not even going to get passed in Parliament in real life. So onto the links. They really don't touch our link scenario enough. They tell you that like, oh, like North Korea is in fact capitalism and that hegemony is not equal to capitalism. Like they're literally not engaging in the link I tell you. So they literally tell you that like South Korea needs to be increasing its hegemony overall. So what we're telling you is that hegemony is a means of spreading global capitalism. Like the only reason South Korea is using this like democratizing mission of like, oh, helping these poor like North Korean people who are suffering so much is so that they're able to increase their soft power, increase the power of capitalism in that area. They want to be viewed as a positive actor and to increase like the capitalism and increase like the way that their government is represented into the North Korean government overall. And then they never even respond to our second warrant. We tell you on how like literally South Korea trying to like control the North Korean people through economic dependence and making them reliant on them. They say that that's probably a good thing because now they're starving rather than dying. But the point where like they're the ones that are like causing all these economic problems in the first place because they're the ones who put sanctions on them because like they're scared of like North Korea like trying to like empower itself through nuclear weapons. What we see is that like really they're not they're solving for a problem that they're causing in the first place through capitalism overall. So they really don't make sense. And on to the UN thing, that the UN thing was actually a separate link. We tell you about how like UN as an organization, like it's like directly a scientific panel has stated that capitalism is unable to solve for climate change. They tell you that this is false, but this is literally like a UN panel report from scientists. You can search this up. This is exactly what the report says. And they're saying that like capitalism is not able to solve in any way whatsoever. They tell you about carbon tax and how the government is doing and how it's solving the issue. Number one, it's not solving the issue. Climate change is still a very big issue. And number two, we're seeing that governments only like carbon taxes because it lets them get money from the government, get money from companies overall. So it's still based on like economic justification. I'll tell you about.
So in the modern world, how do you actually solve the issues of like intense greenhouse gas emissions without having these solutions like a carbon tax or like other methods that are related to money?
Like modern solutions is like focusing more on consumption than focusing on like actual like different methods to address this consumption. So first we need to address like why is there even global warming in the first place? It's not like global warming was a thing like thousands of years ago. This is because of the overconsumption, because of capitalism, from the fact that we always want to like keep working and keep powering and like just be the most advanced country overall. So what we're seeing is that like by addressing like the epistemology behind capitalism overall, we're able to address the root cause, because then we're able to consider why do we need so much consumption of energy in the first place and start to take steps to like decrease our own personal consumption and solve for this.
Innovation will never be cheaper than like shale oil.
Yeah, innovation is never going to be cheaper than shale oil, so we're still using shale oil. They're never going to solve for it. So yeah, our links pretty much still stand. They don't delink themselves. They're just saying that like, oh, it's probably a good thing that we're giving them money in the first place. So once again, onto impact, the point where they concede all of our root cause claims onto how it's literally causing poverty, it's causing these resource shortages, that it's causing climate change in the first place, and it causes militarism because these people are fighting against each other over resource wars. And the point where they concede every single root cause claim we give you, they have no way of winning the round today because they concede the fact that like they're going to be solving a problem. They're always going to be solving a problem that they're causing themselves, putting a band-aid on the bullet hole, and never actually being able to solve overall. Only the negations critique is able to effectively neutralize this by like questioning our epistemology and changing our actions because of this. Not to the alt. They tell you that you can perm, but they literally concede our entire perm spike in the framework that tells you that any non-capitalist methodology has to be paired with non-capitalist mindset. So they can't like just give you this ontology, or they can't give you like a capitalist mindset of like trying to increase their domination within North Korea at the same time while carrying this rhetoric. Like it simply clashes. So what we're seeing is actually going to co-opt the movement and make the mean so that the movement doesn't actually work overall. And yeah, so at the point where they concede it, they really can't tell you that the perm functions. They concede the fact that like with the plan, none of the impacts of the alt are able to actually solve. And then what we see is that like CAPK is running a billion times. We tell you how constant resistance is key. At the point where we're providing constant resistance, that's the only way we're going to solve for CAP. So for these reasons, you'll be going for the kinetic.
Okay. Cool. Okay. So is everyone ready?
Yeah.
I will basically just be doing like an overview and then like going down the K and like combining that with like voters.
Should I just load in a new sheet or should I follow the line by line? Whatever you can.
Do it on a new sheet.
Okay.
Okay, is everyone ready? And with that, I'll start my time now. It's a clear vote for the negation. At the end of the day, when the affirmation doesn't do enough work as to why we need to prioritize post-fiat over pre-fiat impacts in a world where policymaking is not accessible to everyone. Extend my partner's analysis that right now, we as minority, like women, we can't participate in their policymaking space. We can't participate in their rhetoric. We can't participate in their discourse of what a post-fiat world even looks like because we can't participate in policymaking itself. Okay, and then now just like going down, like on framework, we're going to be seeing that the negation is actually winning framework because they made the fatal flaw of like conceding that bad epistemology leads to bad policy and serial policy failure. So in a world where they function under capitalism and they concede that capitalism does have bad things, that it is rooted in bad structures, you're going to be finding that like
all their post-fiat impacts,
are going to be negative anyways. And two, even if you don't buy that, they still don't solve for the structural impacts. They don't solve for cap overall. So you're going to be seeing that it's a recurring cycle. They concede that. What level is that? On like
yeah.
Okay, they can see that fact, so it's like even if you buy that their plan may have marginal impacts, you're going to be seeing that like down the line there's going to be more pauses needing to be fixed because they're never going to fix these issues forever. It's just going to come again and again because they're putting a bandage on a boat hole. And then at the end of the day,
they never tell you why debating philosophy is bad.
They never tell you why debating philosophy is bad. They just say that philosophy is good, but don't buy that we're decreasing education. Extend my partner's own analysis that epistemological debates are actually better because like it's just like more breadth
rather than accepting the world the way it is. We're actually able to question why things are.
Yeah,
be able to exact change.
Yeah, it actually trains our critical thinking skills overall more because we actually like determine what the world looks like with different structures away from capitalism. They say that this is uniquely bad, but we're gonna because like that's not how our state functions right now. But again, we're actually gonna like you can extend the analysis that right now like this point actually goes for our side because at the point where they drop the Texas Board of Education warrant that like right now the status quo is like shaped by capitalism and it can't like we can't imagine it as a world without capitalism because it like permeates into our knowledge and how we get our knowledge. So, like when we look to textbooks, that's all controlled by capitalism. So we're seeing that we must break away from this instance or else we're always going to assume that the status quo will always have benefits. So we can't even participate in their policy making without breaking away from the current structures in the status quo. And then two,
so onto the link level.
Okay, yeah. Onto the links.
Because they cannot completely delink themselves.
They don't. If they don't delink themselves, and if you buy that they like
even slightly
link into our K, you're going to be voting for the negation at the end of the day because that shows that their plan has negative ramifications and does
causes the
structural issues of capitalism. And okay, onto the alts.
Okay. So they can see that we never say we have to dismantle.
They can see that we never have to dismantle cap.
capitalism in the first place.
In the first place, we
question our
just have to question our
representations
representations of it and how that's actually going to have the biggest impacts in the round today. So like at the beginning, when I specifically say that like our in-round impacts are going to be the most important impacts because it shapes how we go as educated voters, like that's still going to be good. And even if they don't come out believing that capitalism is a structure that needs to be changed, the specific debate that we have about this is going to be key about how we interact with politics in the future. And because that is the only tangible impact of the round today, because Fiat is a loser, that's another reason to vote for the neg. And then and then you're going to be seeing that again, like right now, the debate space spillover is uniquely important because, like, again, debate shapes our political views. So, like, the reason we have to have this right now, the reason we can't have it anywhere else is because there's a setting with judges that is being recorded where we can actually have this, like, overall discourse and we have to justify our ideological understandings. And also, overall, this is like the best debate the best debate to have, the best space and the best debate to have because the affirmation is still allowed to do policymaking, but they have to justify their ideological understandings, which is probably always going to be better because it decreases the amount of flaws and decreases the amount of like serial policy failure overall. So always vote for neg for a more inclusive space.
So you have framework. So.
Can I have a...
Yeah. So the order is going to be an overview, and then K, and then F.
K in the same order?
Yeah. Actually, sorry. Overview, F, and then K. Because, like, yeah.
Wait, what did...
Overview, F, K. So I'll tell you. Okay. Overview. At the point where there's no reason to vote for the negative, even if you accept their anti-capitalist ideology, because of our conceded responses, you should clearly be supporting our side. Let's start on the affirmative. First of all, extend everything Nolan says here in response to the refutations, and extend everything that was conceded coming out of the first neg. They say Trump couldn't do it, so there's no possible solution. Trump isn't reducing sanctions. He's just like meeting unsuccessfully with North Korea, and then UN backlash, which they cross-apply like in the K2. One, UN charters are violated by everyone, like how the U.S. like goes against so many parts of the UDHR, and secondly, the UN has no enforcement mechanism, so their backlash is insignificant. The second argument, they just say cross-apply, extend everything here. So in like the post-fiat world, we are clearly beneficial. Also in the pre-fiat world, we're beneficial for all the reasons that I'll state now in the framework. Yeah.
If a team is going to run... Well, first of all, remember, framework makes the game work.
Yeah, framework makes the game work.
If a team is going to run a critical argument, they must win all framework.
If a team is going to run a critical argument, they must win all the framework arguments.
Nolan gives a litany of reasons that their framework is illegitimate that are not sufficiently responded to.
Yeah.
The articulation that we have to win every single point on our framework in order to win the debate is new and should be taken into consideration.
Okay, that's fine.
It's a weighing argument about how you should be.
Yeah, I guess it's a framing argument as to how you should evaluate the K. But like, it's fine if you don't know.
I'm willing to disagree if you are.
Yeah, you can just go ahead.
Sorry, I will say that I think this is going to be an offensive implication here because it seems to reshape the entirety of the offense.
It really wasn't coming into my decision, so.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine.
Okay, whatever.
Let's just rephrase and move on.
Okay, Nolan gives a litany of reasons why the framework is illegitimate and that they are not sufficiently responded to.
But they do function independently.
They all function
That's not new.
Yeah.
So the main thing here that they don't respond to is that my point about how elites will continue to control and cause suffering in the world where we are stuck.
Yeah, Nolan's conceded argument about how elites will continue to control and cause suffering in the world. What's the last?
And while we are stuck talking about capitalism,
While we are stuck talking about capitalism in high school.
and how there's a multiplying effect that goes on.
Yeah, there's a multiplying effect that's bad.
That because that is not sufficiently responded to. That's just an independent. That from the beginning, that's just an independent reason.
Yeah, that's an independent reason to be voting for our side because we specifically say that even if epistemology is important, their epistemology is very bad at the point where like the processes for their like knowledge production and decision making are exclusive.
Yeah. Also, the censorship argument. It's the response is not developed well enough.
Oh yeah, they don't have a response to the censorship argument.
Because you are preventing people from actually discussing how to solve these types of issues.
Yeah, what they are using what they say is like capitalist strategy by censoring like what other people think are important by saying that you should just vote us down because of like what we said, saying that you should vote us down because so like specifically because we said anything related to capitalism is a censorship strategy.
Also extend what Nolan said about how by them using censorship, they're linking into their own K because it is a capitalist technique.
Yeah, this links into their own K, as Nolan said.
So that means that they're
So that means that they're contradictory. That means that like prerequisite to any of the impacts to all of
And
the
they don't
alternatives.
officially
We should
respond
be
to the ivory.
evaluating this
They don't
because
officially
think-
respond to the ivory tower argument. They say
Yeah,
that
okay,
they're-
so I'll get into the ivory tower. The only response to the ivory tower argument was, first of all, they say poor people know about the capitalist problems. Obviously, poor people know that, like, they aren't getting enough money or whatever, but these poor people are not going to be able to, like, go into the debate space or go into all of these rallies and be able to express that, especially because they're working so hard for their lives. Like, this ivory tower argument does not, like, the ivory tower argument clearly proves that these people are not having access to
And
the
they say
same
that it's legitimate for them because their like ancestors came from places that are communist, but right
Oh
now
yeah,
they're not in a communist society.
they say it's okay for us because our families came from communist countries. It's literally just weaponizing identity to win. Like, you cannot vote on this argument because, like, I'm sorry that I'm white. I didn't choose to be born white and not be born from a family from, like, a communist country. You shouldn't be voting on this, like, identity argument.
Thus ivory tower like flows through.
Yeah, this ivory tower flows through.
So
and
we
we
have
really
at
say that
least
even if you
three
believe that,
framework
yeah,
arguments that are going to be
yeah, we have all of
one
these
should
kind of
not
framework
matter.
arguments. Even if you believe that epistemology is important, you should clearly be denying everything they're saying here because their epistemology is bad. Their epistemology is exclusive.
Also, we win the hurt education argument because they're really the only. Say we win education.
We win education.
Because they say serial policy failure, but Nolan proves that.
Oh yeah, on
policy
serial
doesn't
policy
exist because of slavery
failure.
and how that's
Yeah,
related.
slavery is not existent in the modern day
Stop
U.S. and they
lying.
say
Our civil war came out of LOC, and also the serial policy failure also came out of the LOC, so these are new arguments.
yeah. So Nolan gave responses, and then during the blog, Nolan questioned like, is slavery existent in the modern day U.S. and you bring up human trafficking. So I'm
Where
You
do you
can't-
know this argument?
what?
Where
But
do
you
you
can't extend something from POI.
No.
Yeah, I
that's
know,
not
but
human
you
trafficking,
made a
sorry.
response about human trafficking, and I'm about to talk about human trafficking.
But which argument do you have that ended up below?
Like, we say that slavery doesn't exist in the modern day U.S.
When the POIs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a new argument.
No.
I also think it's.
Okay. So yeah, again, their epistemology is exclusive. Let's go into the other parts of the critique. Extend all of our responses on the link arguments. They talk about how hegemony equals capitalism. We just say hegemony is having influence. Non-capitalist countries have hegemony. Extend this argument. This proves that hegemony in itself is not like a capitalist thing, and thus we can be like talking about hegemony and not be capitalist. So this link doesn't make sense. And that they say South Korea is only helping people to be seen as a good actor. That's just not true. Like, South Korea is already being seen as a good actor. They don't need to like give aid to these people in need. Next, on their last link, they talk about North Korean. We say North Korean citizens want aid, and they just say that the capitalism causes these root problems. No, it isn't. Non-capitalist countries are giving trade, like Russia and China, as I identified in the first speech, but they're not actually helping anything. These non-capitalist countries are causing the problems. So last on UN link, we have conceded responses on UN. Extend those. So on the alternative, the key response here is to the ballot being key to incentivize more people and how you need to vote for them. Cap case have no educational value because they're run so many times. They concede that. Extend that. That means there's literally no reason to vote for their side because the ballot is not key. So you should be supporting ours. Thank you.